The following program is a Creative Magic Network production. You're listening to What's Your Excuse with Max Ivy, known around the world as the Blind Blogger. People often say, if Max can do it, then why can't I? Here's Max Ivy.
Okay, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Max Ivy, the Blind Blogger, and another episode of What's Your Excuse, where we get into how people become the person they end up being. And today I'm joined with a good friend of mine from my early days as a guest on these shows, David Rafe from Join Up Dots, and we're a little technically challenged today, so I'm not able to give you David's intro, and my buddy Frederick is recording, but he's not talking today. So, David, why don't you introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about your background and how you became the guy who's behind Join Up Dots?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an absolute delight to connect with you once again, Max. It was an absolute delight to have you on my show. God, I must have been about 300 episodes now. So, yeah, my name is David Ralph, and I'm the host of Join Up Dots, which is used to be a 7-day-a-week motivational podcast. It's now 4 days a week. And we've been going rather well. Now, to lead into how I became a podcaster, it's a bit of a murky old story, and it was more trial but error. But you know, when you look back on something and you think, yeah, okay, it might have been by error, but thank God I found this, because it really is my thing, and it's a job that pays me very well and is great fun as well. So it was a complete fluke, complete mistake, but I listened to a podcast one day and thought, I think I could do that. And ever since then, that's what I've been doing. So I am now a full-time podcaster, sir.
Well, my friend Frederick is going to kill me if I don't ask the next obvious question there. Could you, for all the people who are doing podcasts, because he does a show about creative people, what are some of the things that you've done to be able to make a living at it? Because that's something that's kind of rare in the podcasting world. There are a few rock stars that are getting well paid, but for the most part, it's more about passion and spreading a message and maybe promoting your own services.
Yeah, well, it's pretty much the same thing. One of the things that I realised early in the day, well, when I started off, my whole business plan was to grow an audience and then put sponsorship on it. That was pretty much my plan. And I got close to it, and I started having people knocking on my door asking to sponsor my show. And I suddenly thought, hang on, this is a bit dodgy here. If they sponsor my show for a quarter or for half a year or whatever, great. What happens if they change their mind and they want to sponsor Max Ivy's show or and I'd lose all my income? And it was a real wake-up call for me. So I started building my own products. And so I've got several different products which are quite eclectic. But the beauty with podcasting more than anything is you build connections with people, and those connections have got so much value because there's skills behind them. And now I'm in an enviable position of linking my name to other people's products, which also become quite lucrative. So you can go in many different directions. Most people at the very beginning will look for sponsorship and then look for maybe one-to-one coaching, that kind of stuff. I didn't really want to do that, Max. I wanted to make sure that the money could come to me, but my time was 100% my own. And that's how I've done it. And it's gone very well. Wasn't easy at the beginning. It was a real struggle, but now it's one of those things that I look back on and I think, thank God for the struggle.
Okay, mention the websites and a couple of the products that you offer on there, just to give some people some examples of how you're monetizing your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the website is joinupdots.com. That is the whole portal. And then in there you can find Podcasters Mastery, where we teach people how to not only create a show, but to how to take their show and really turn it into a business. So off the back of that, we created Dream Starters Academy, which is a kind of group mastermind, which people pay a monthly membership for, which led off of that, people started asking how to do podcasting, but how to actually become better at interviewing. So we created Interview Masterclass. And the beauty about it, Max, is once people trust you, they start telling you what they want. And you can literally say to them, what would you like from me? What part of my knowledge would you be willing to pay for? And they tell you. So it's kind of like, what do they say? Shooting fish in a barrel. It's becomes quite profitable and easy because people actually tell you what they want. So you build it and then they buy it.
Yeah, this kind of fits into a conversation or experience I had in what I'm doing. Since the last time I met you, one of the things I've been doing is helping people get booked on podcasts and radio shows.
Yeah.
And it was one of those cases where people said, Max, you're doing dozens of shows. How do you do it? And I started telling some people, and a good friend of mine, Michael Babcock, said, Max, you can't be giving this stuff away. You should be charging for it. So, that led to me creating an online course. And then that led to me creating, offering a service where I'm basically their online media publicist. So you're right. A lot of times it's, if you're doing something and people see you doing it, or they get to know you and they trust you, they will ask you, or you can ask them and find out what it is that's needed out there and what they're willing to pay for, and even how much they're willing to pay for it, so you can go into it knowing whether or not it's a good exchange of your effort and time for money.
Yeah, and the key word that you said there, Max, was trust. It all comes down to trust. You've got to know that when you go to sleep at night, you haven't ripped off anyone and you've provided as much value as possible. And it's a kind of slow burning candle, because when you start creating anything, you're kind of thinking, I need money, I will sleep with anyone, just give me money. And it's not kind of easy to do that, because, when you're a middle-aged podcaster, the people that will sleep with you is few and far between. So you have to start building value. But once you do build value, then it pays you back multiple times.
Yeah, I'm glad you're explaining some of this, because I was afraid I was going to have to translate a couple of your terms for people. So thanks for helping me out there. Just in case anybody isn't familiar with the word dodgy, that's kind of like sleazy or scammy in the English language. So that's just
don't
the one
you use dodgy? Is dodgy not an American word then?
No. We may be starting to use it because of the influence of British television over here, but it's not one of our regular words. But you just have a way, your language, just something when I listen to you, and I'm sure that really helps you when you're dealing with people one-to-one or people listening to your show. Now, you said, in the beginning it was, I need to have money, and that's a problem a lot of people have. So what were some of the things that helped you during the beginning times when you knew you needed money, but you also were, probably struggling to get the money, even as people, you say, eventually started offering to sponsor your show?
Yeah, I think the key thing that I did was I left my ego behind. Now, I was being paid very good salary at my corporate job, which I left. And I went down probably 70% from where I was to where I started, because I started doing other stuff. I did side hustles. Now, it wasn't what I wanted to do, Max. It really wasn't. So I remember for quite a few months, I used to go out in the evening and deliver Chinese food and Indian food just to earn some money, because I knew what I wanted in my life and it couldn't come fast enough, but I needed to cover the bills. So I was willing to do anything within reason that meant that I could cover my bills, to mean that I could keep on doing it until it started paying off. And that's one of the things that I think people struggle with, that in the early days they almost think it's going to be an A to B to C journey, but it's not. It's like A.1, A.2, A.3, I've got to B. And as long as you accept that, and also to accept that if you think it's going to take 6 months, it's going to take a year, always double it, then I don't think you can really fail. But I do think that the biggest thing that I did was leave my ego behind and go, it doesn't matter what I was, it's what I want to be, and how can I get there?
I love that saying. It's not what I was, but what I want to be. And it even wasn't what you are, or what people, if people's looking at it in the present, it's not what I am, it's what I want to be.
Yeah.
And your story there, it's kind of like what you hear from successful rock stars and movie actors. They'll always tell you about all those horrible, awful jobs they had before they started cashing big checks. I think my favorite was Tom Arnold worked in a slaughterhouse. That's just, but if you listen to these celebrities, they generally have to do, jobs they hated while they were learning their craft or getting to the point where people would give them the jobs where they would make the big money. So
yeah, and the problem is, Max,
maybe that's so.
The problem is that we only see the highlights. You know, we don't see the people doing it on the red carpet. We see them picking up their Oscars and stuff. You know, it would be great. And that's what I love about podcasting. You can see the journey. You know, you can go back to episode 1 of my show, and hopefully it wasn't too bad, but you can see that it's nowhere near 300. And 300 should be, you know, not as good as 700, and it just a sort of journey through. And I like that about the online world. So if somebody wants to sort of be a podcaster, you know, go back and listen to my first show, and it's not very good, but I persevered.
Yeah, this is one of those places, the podcasting and blogging, where not only is it okay to share your mistakes and your horrible moments, it's almost a necessity, which I love that. If people look at my first video for the blindblogger.net, I'm sitting in the dark because I didn't know that the lights weren't on. And one of these days I'm going to go listen to your first podcast because I can't believe you're ever that bad, but I think it's one of those things people have to remember. Here's a guy who's successful, but he's still got those early episodes around because he knows that they have value, not just for the people listening, but for you as well, to keep that stuff around.
Yeah, that's right. And if you listen to episode 2, that was the very first one I ever recorded. And I promised episode 1 that he would go out first because there's a bit of a story behind it. And they're not terrible. They're not terrible. It lacks confidence, which is understandable because in those days you literally, you know, you're just hoping that when it looks like it's recording, it is recording, and you can think of what to say and stuff. I've had a couple of those where I've got to the end, done a fantastic job, or so I thought it was a fantastic job, and you can't hear me at all. It's just a guest. And it's one of those things which is all part of the practice. It's all part of the 10,000 hour rule, as they say.
Yeah, well, that's why I don't do this show by myself, because that way I don't generally have to worry about the technical stuff. That's what I let Frederick worry about the technical stuff, and I just try to have a good conversation with people that have good stories. So
yeah, and you can blame Fred, can't you? You can blame him when it all goes wrong. That's what you're trying to say, Max.
You know, that reminds me of a funny story. Back when I still had a carnival, my dad was Max Ivy Sr., and I'm Max Jr. And he used to tell me, he would go, Max, I'm going to have to tell these people that we can't do something for them, and I'm going to blame it on you. It's going to be your fault. I just want you to know that in case they ever ask you, because trust me, this was your fault. And I'm like, okay, as long as I know that's my story.
Perfect way of doing
how many
it.
Things. So who is part of your team? Who helps David Rafe put his show on and do everything that you're up to?
Me. That's one of the things I realised right at the very beginning. I like to have a structure that I'm under control of. So I worked really hard. And this is where Podcasters Mastery, my platform, came from, because I streamline every single thing. And I do it all in one day. So I've got everything down to an absolute, you know, masterclass. And I wouldn't have got that if I started outsourcing, because I wouldn't have seen all the nuts and bolts that you needed to put together to make an engine. So I'm hugely sort of pleased that I went through the effort. But no, nobody helps me, sir. It's just me, it's my voice, and it's my large, mighty microphone.
Okay, well then then I'm going to be in trouble, because I'm one of these people who I'm constantly telling people if somebody tells you that they don't have help, it just means they're not telling you who the help is. So
yeah, which is true, but I'm a bit anal. I like to keep control, you know. I did dabble with having somebody sort of working for me, and I just thought, I can do it quicker myself. And there's certain things about a podcast which is a bit boring. It's great, the recording, but the uploading it and stuff is a bit boring as well. But my record for production of a show, because I record and edit everything live, there's no after production, is 19 seconds. And I've never found anyone that can produce a show quicker than me.
Okay, well, how about mentors or coaches before you became a podcaster? Anybody that you that you would remember fondly who helped you as far as the motivational side of starting your own thing?
No, once again, I was very fortunate. I say this to people, and it's funny, I've heard John Lee Dumas, the host of Entrepreneur on Fire, say the same thing. And when he said it, I thought, yeah, I agree with that totally. But I've never had a business coach or mentor because I've had 700 of them. Because in my show, I speak to people every single day, and every single one of them says something that I think, oh yeah, that's genius. You know, I can take that forward. So it's fortunate I'm getting like free therapy or coaching or whatever you want to say. Right at the very, very beginning, there was a guy called Michael O'Neill on the Solopreneur Hour, and he was very inspirational for me because he allowed me the confidence to do this. He played a little sound clip on his show, episode 8, at about 16 minutes and 42. Not that I can count. And it was one of those things that it was so exciting to hear my voice coming back offline. I kept on playing it secretly. And so that was a big confidence boost. But no, everything else has just been me doing it. And little by little, you start to believe in yourself. And it's funny, other people believe in you more than you believe in yourself. So it was up to about episode 300. I still hadn't really told anyone that I was a podcaster. You know, I kept it secret because if anyone found out, it was going to be hugely embarrassing. And I've likened it to, you know, up to 300, it was me reading a pornography magazine quite happily. But after 300, it was me reading it next to my mum. You know, I actually had to share it with the world that this is what I am now. This is what I'm doing. And funnily enough, from that point on, I think the show's got a bit better. The audience certainly went up because I really opened up myself to this is my life now. And beforehand, it was me playing. Does that make sense, Max?
It makes a lot of sense because it's like when you hear people who say that they have you hear people talk that are bulimic or have body image issues until they accept that they're thin or pretty, nothing else will do it for them. So I understand what you're saying there. You accepted that you're a podcaster and your work got a lot better. And you know, that's one of the things you hear a lot of, that until you get to the point where you can say you're a writer or say you're a musician or say you're a blogger out loud and tell that to people at cocktail parties, you're never going to become that really the level of person at that job or at that skill that you would have been if you kept trying to keep it to yourself and hide it from the world.
Yeah, I think next time I'm going to say I'm a pornography addict to see what they say.
It can't be no worse than telling people you're a carnival owner.
No, that's true.
Because I used to do that with pride, though. I'm one of the few people in my immediate family who would tell people he was a carnival owner at among people who were not in the business. My younger middle brother was a truck driver, and my youngest brother used to tell people he drove a limo for a living. But you know, I was always proud of what I did, and I'm one of these people. I've been real lucky that most of my family and people who know me haven't had a problem with me being a blogger or a podcaster or an equipment broker or whatever I've been. And most of my associates from the, you know, I've got a huge extended family that are still in the carnival business. Most of those people find what I do now more interesting than helping people sell rides. So, you know, it's interesting. And I think part of that has to do with accepting it to the point that you're willing to tell people that that's what you do. And I think that's why a lot of people have trouble with their friends and relatives not respecting them being bloggers, because they don't respect themselves being bloggers on their own.
Yeah, I used to blush when I would hear my wife listening to my show. And she said, no, you know, I enjoy it. But I used to walk in and think, oh, just turn it off, which is really strange because I want the world. I want everyone to listen to it. And I listen to it myself. I listen to every single one of my episodes about 4 or 5 times. Ones that I'm interviewed on, ones that I do myself, so that I can get better at the nuances that make a good show, the flow, because there's an energy that has to flow through things so it feels, appetizing for you, the guest, the listener. It's you've got to be very aware of that. But when it was my family, and my daughter used to be on holiday and she used to be walking around the swimming pool playing it to her friends, and when her dad, the famous podcaster, is laying there in his trunks, you don't want to hear yourself blasting out from the other side of the pond. So I used to, find it hugely embarrassing, but now I go, anyone out there, play it, give me the downloads, give me the listeners.
Yeah. And I liked the one thing you said a few minutes ago that I wanted to come back to is you said you feel like every time you do an interview, it's like a mini therapy session, that you always come out with an aha moment when you have somebody on your show. And I have found that as a guest, because I've been a guest a whole lot more times than I've been a host or co-host. And I think this is our 10th show, so I'm nowhere near in your league yet as far as being on this side of the questions. But I feel that way whenever I'm interviewed on somebody else's show, that the host will always say at least one thing that I go, dang, that really meant something to me. And a couple of times I've even stopped in the middle of shows because they said something that affected me to the point where I wanted to make sure I remembered it.
Yeah, it's strange, really. It's like the lessons. Especially as a host, I find a lot of times I'm giving out words of advice and I'm spouting it big time. And as I'm spouting it, sometimes I think I don't do that myself. That's brilliant. That is brilliant advice there, but I'm not actually doing it myself. So it's kind of like you've got all the lessons inside you, but sometimes you need to have these conversations to really find that message. And it certainly does work back when you've got guests talking to you about their own struggles, because there's just gems in there, especially in regards to time control and things like that. Some of the things that people out there are doing, when you first listen to it, you think, you're a lunatic. How are you doing that? That's just madness. But once you hear about 40 people saying it, you think, this is genius. I'm going to do it myself. And so you do.
Yeah, one of my recent questions had to do with checking email, and the host was sharing with me about how more and more people were starting to say that they refuse to check their email until after 10 o'clock or afternoon. And that I'm like, that's insanity. How can you do that? How can you actually get away with that? But then I realize how tired I sometimes feel after just answering my email. And I'm like, who knows? I'd probably get a lot more done if I just said the hell with it and left it till noon. So those are, those kinds of things, like you said, that you hear them, and a friend of mine, Adrian Smith, likes to say that most of the important lessons, for some reason, as people, we have to hear them over and over again. We may know them, we may recognize them when we hear them, but for some reason, we can't just hear them once and do them.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, Max, I check my emails once every 2 weeks. And I've never had an email that's come through to me that says, please help me, I'm drowning, I need your help now. So it's made no difference at all. I just tell people it's going to be 2 weeks, and I respond to everyone. And it's just been, something that I schedule into my calendar. I know I've got to go through them, and it works like a dream. I might even go to 3 weeks.
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to have to try that. I don't know if I could go 3 weeks. Maybe I should start with 1 day. But yeah, it's always great talking to you. I should remember to mention that the show is on the Creative Magic Network at frederickby.com, FREDERICBYE.com. The Creative Magic Store has got my books over there and some books of some of our other guests. And you sign up to the email list and you get email notifications on this show, on Frederick's shows, on Kim Sutton's new show that's on the network, and any other great guests or hosts that we add to the network. Okay, so I've done that part. I'm trying to get this host thing down, because I'm not exactly sure I see myself as the host, but I do see myself as the co-host. So we'll muddle through with since the technology has betrayed us. So what is in the near future for you, David? What are you doing as the year comes to a close, or you have planned for 2017?
Well, I've got to stop my heart for a moment. Frederick just burst. I forgot he was around. I forgot he was sitting there, and I suddenly thought, who the hell was that talking? Hello, Fred. It's nice to hear you again. Right, I've calmed myself now. Right, we are launching a new platform in early 2017. I've got a new business partner that I've connected with virtually. He's been doing some work for me in our skills complement. So we've got about a month and a half to really grow something, which is kind of secret squirrel time at the moment, Maxwell. But I think it's going to be another income stream. And then after that, I'm going to take it a bit easy. I've been sort of working quite hard over the last 2 or 3 years growing everything. And it's at the point now that I can rest, because one of the things that I've heard so many people say, and it's true, that they have become better when they have allowed themselves to recharge. You know, we're all batteries and we just keep on going and wonder why we feel flat sometimes. So once I get to about the end of January, I'm coming over to Florida to do some training for a podcast convention in February, but I'm going to have a bit of a rest. I'm going to wear my shorts, I'm going to grow my hair long, maybe not shave, and go into my sort of Bee Gees tribute moment. I'm going to just let myself go a bit.
Okay, well, with that accent and the long hair, and being that it's South Florida, don't be surprised if you get asked for autographs. You know,
I will just get really fat and wear long white socks. Every time I've been in Florida, that's just all I've seen. Very large men wearing sandals and long white socks. Bizarre image. Okay.
Thanks for putting that image in my head, because that's one of the images I don't that I have memories of certain images. That wasn't one of them, so thank you for adding it to my catalog.
You are welcome, sir.
Yeah, I should mention that that David was one of the first people that I pitched to be on his show, and he was happy enough to have me on his show, and he added to my list of nicknames by calling me the Blind Terminator. So that. That's one thing I always. That's one of the reasons why I always remember David whenever somebody is talking about podcasting or doing what it is we do. And I'm glad that I could get you on my show. And for anybody that's listening, yeah, I am scrambling in my head for a good question at this point.
I'll give you a good question, sir. I'll give you a good question. Right, this is almost like I haven't told you, so you can edit this, but are you known as the sexiest UK podcaster going?
Okay, David, are you known as the sexiest UK podcaster going?
Do you know, it's funny you ask that, Max, because yes, it is known that I am. I like to wear that as a badge of honour, and my wife doesn't think so anymore, but yes, I am. That is a great question to ask. You really hit home with that one.
Okay, well, did they at least split the honor? So is there like a men's and a women's champ?
No, I take all of it.
Can you introduce me to who is considered the sexiest female UK podcaster?
Well, it doesn't matter. You can't see them anyway, so there's no point in that, sir.
Oh, but I'm really into English accents.
And you're good with your hands, I imagine.
Yeah, okay. I set myself up for that one. Yeah, I did. That was good. I had a question, and then he knocked it completely out of my head.
I have a question, Dave. Here, Max, you can ask that question. How do you deal with uncertainty, David, with the entrepreneurial life? How do you deal with uncertainty? Now, we won't hear me on the recording, so you can ask it the way you want it, Max.
Okay. Yeah, David, you talked about how in the early days you did just about anything in order to have money coming in. But were you ever afraid or uncertain or concerned or worried that the money wasn't going to come in? And if so, how did you deal with that?
Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. It's when I lurched from feelings of absolute, I've nailed this is going to be brilliant, to what the hell am I doing? And I must admit, there was times when my health was affected because I just worked at it. But I never thought I wouldn't achieve it. That was the good thing. You know, I did have those doubts in the middle of the night when you're laying there clutching your pillow thinking, oh my God. But I never not thought that it was going to be achievable. And I don't mean this arrogantly. I hope it doesn't come across as arrogant. But I looked at all the people that were doing very well online, doing things that I wanted to do. And there wasn't one that I thought was dramatically better than me. There were some that had been doing it longer, so they were more confident and more polished, but I didn't think there was anyone out there that I couldn't at least match or get close to. And I found that a real sort of confidence. So it was more my own personal belief that pushed me through those early days, but not once did I ever think of stopping. And I actually, in the early days, there was a guy on my show and I said, can I book you in as my 1,000th guest? And they said, yeah, when's that going to be? I said, probably about 4 years' time. And I've got him booked on because I just knew I wanted a target to keep working towards. And we're about 720 now. So it's not that far to actually achieve that. And then I will book somebody in for my 2,000th guest. So I just keep on going at it.
Yeah, see, and I liked what you talked about there, how you can have days where you don't feel like you know what you're doing, and days where you feel totally confident, but at the end of the day, you know that the goal is attainable if you just keep working towards it.
Yeah, you know, it's a 10,000-hour rule. When you see, like, the Beatles, you realise that they started off by having to learn a guitar and then learn chords and then learn. It's all upskilling and self-development. And no matter what you do in life, no matter how many trials and tribulations you have, it's learning. And I read a book once, and this guy was saying that he was really struggling. I can't remember what the book was. He was really struggling, and he met this millionaire, and the millionaire said, don't worry, you won't struggle as long as you know enough of the reasons why you're not getting the results. And all he was doing before then was trying to get results. He never stopped to assess actually why things weren't going his way. And he changed his focus, and that ties into that kind of practice and persistence. You just have to keep on going at it. And if you do struggle, if you do fail, you have to look at it and think, okay, that's no problem. That's just learning. I'll move on again. But if you keep on doing the same thing again, then you're just an idiot. So you've got to sort of actually realise why that didn't work and find a different way of doing it.
Yeah, and with a lot of people, the problem comes down to the different way, because people may think that they're willing to do pretty much whatever it takes for them to be successful, but most people have a list of things they won't do. You know, you talked about your ego as far as there wasn't a lot that you weren't willing to do to pay the bills while you were starting the podcast. But I think there are a lot of people who, if you ask them, what would you not do, or what are you willing to do? Like the old commercial for the Klondike bar. What would you do for a Klondike bar? Which is a U.S. ad campaign, and people did some pretty silly things to get that ice cream. I think a lot of people though have a long list of things that they won't do because they just don't see them as seemly or professional or workable or somebody that should be doing if they're going to be successful. And a lot of times that's what it takes. It's that willingness to do stuff where, you know, maybe you wouldn't want nobody knowing you ever had to do that to pay the bills.
Literally everything that I do now, Max, for my show and my online platform, I've actually learned how to do doing something totally non-connected. You know, over the last 20 years, I can look back and join up my dots, as my show says. And there are so many skills that I have developed when I was in banking, when I was in insurance, when I was in, you know, all these different jobs. And I didn't once think to myself, oh, this is great, I'm going to learn this because this is going to be used 20 years down the line. It's just there. And you bring it all together and you look at your super talents and you think, how can I sort of do something that I enjoy doing and can sort of pay the bills? And the weird thing is, and I'm really sort of hitting home on this now, the more I enjoy something, the more money I earn. I can't get away from this sort of mentality that I've had for years and years and years, that you go and you slog and you work and it's hard and it's not supposed to be fun and all that kind of stuff. Because now I've totally flipped that on its head, and my whole remit really for 2017 and certainly from this point onwards is, if it looks like it's going to be boring, I'm not going to do it. End of story. I don't care what it is, even if it's a load of money. I don't want to wake up each morning thinking, oh God, I've got that to do today, you know. And it's not going to be, you know, singing in the garden every morning, but more often than not, I want to wake up and think, yeah, I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be a good day.
Well, you know, one of the things I get told over and over and over again by quote, business coaches, unquote, is, Max, you're never going to be successful until you pick one thing and do nothing but that one thing. And my response to that is, if I did one thing and just one thing, like if I chose between the writing and equipment brokering, I would probably get bored and get tired and quit doing that one thing that was left over. So I could really appreciate what you're saying about, if it's not fun, if it's not fun, then it's probably not going to make you money doing it.
Yeah, I with podcasting, I could do it every single day. These conversations, I love. I really do. I love being a guest. I love being a host. I've got another podcast as well that I do for members only. I just love doing it, and it's never boring. So I do kind of think that your coaches are kind of right. But what they're sort of saying is, if you can find the thing where the passion is, then that will get you noticed quicker, I think they're saying, because you will develop, you will put in the effort, you will want to become as good as you possibly can. And when that sort of tide starts rising and you're standing on that boat, then people are going to sort of notice you. I think that's what they're saying with that.
Yeah, it's just very difficult to pick one over the others, especially when all of them are still, I would say, quite a ways away from making me real money.
Yeah.
You know, it would be, you know, of course, that's the thing. If it was, as my dad used to say, if it was easy, anybody would do it. So, you know, deciding your future path, what you're going to invest all your time, effort, and passion in, that's never an easy call. But I did realize something about myself recently, and that is, I've been focusing way too much on making money and not enough on just doing it for the joy of doing it. And as I go into the end of 2016, that's what I'm trying to focus on for me. And it's helpful to hear you talk about how you're going to go into next year looking for things that are more fun and less effort.
Yeah, I don't know even if it's less effort, but I think the more fun, the less it feels like effort, if you know what I mean. You know, I've got to do certain stuff that I will probably have to prepare and really work at, but I know it's going to be fun. And I suppose the flip side of that is, the more fun you have now, I think it ties into sort of the fairgrounds and stuff. You know, the real scary rides are the ones that you come out afterwards and you go, oh, I thought that was going to be really scary. I loved it. I really loved it. And so I think that there's a scariness where the fun and the scariness comes together, and once you step off, you realise you've stepped forward and you're now in a different land. You know, you've come out of that area that you've been in into something else. And in that something else, there's better opportunities and there's more money. And what your dad was saying is, you know, if it's easy, everyone would do it. And I think, as I say to my kids, the hard stuff, less people do it, so the rewards are bigger. You know, if you look at sort of the best American football players and the best basketball players and all the people that have had to practice, and yeah, there's got to be a bit of natural talent in there, their rewards are always going to be a lot more than somebody who's like a postman, for example, where there's not a lot of sort of upskilling and natural talent that's required.
Yeah, or to put it in the reference from my background, the states in the United States that have the toughest inspection laws for fairground rides are the states where people make the most money at them.
Mm.
Very, very similar concept, yes. Because they keep out a lot of the competition. If you can get to the point where you can pass those inspections, you basically have access to a market nobody else does. So
yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, it's market trends, isn't it?
yeah, it is. And what are some of the market trends you're seeing in podcasting?
I'm seeing a lot of yay in Facebook. You know, there's a lot of people that are. I think they're missing a trick. That when you are a podcaster, it's about the content that you're producing. I think it is the tribe. I think it's your tribe, and you've got to work really closely with the people that have come to you and continue to come to you. So I see a lot of podcasters, and I've actually just gone on a sabbatical from Facebook for a month, and I'll probably leave it till longer, because I see a lot of people shouting in the wrong directions, and that's one of the trends that I would like to sort of alleviate somehow for all podcasters, to not be looking in Facebook, not be looking in Instagram, not be looking at anywhere, but really focusing on the people that are listening. Get more communication with the audience, because if you bridge that gap and they become, you know, as close as friends, then friends talk and friends share, and there's a loyalty that comes to it. So I think that you will build a bigger audience. But I just see it all the time. People are sharing their downloads and sharing this and sharing that and stuff. And to be honest, most of us aren't really that bothered. You know, we say, oh, well done and great on for you and stuff, but we're all kind of focused in on our own path. But yeah, that's a trend that I would like to sort of get free of if I could. They're sort of yay, look at me, because I think they're looking in the wrong direction. Did you agree, Max, or disagree with that?
Oh yeah, I agree with you. I mean, a lot of the biggest complaints you hear from people, if you listen to them, is there's just way too much me. This is what I'm doing on Facebook and other social media accounts. And I was wondering if you have any suggestions on how you put yourself in a place where you can listen to these people, listen to your community. I don't have a huge email list, but one of the things I like to do is I encourage my email list subscribers to send me notifications of their stuff that they have going on. And if somebody has something that I think is really cool, I will put their event in my email list. And I actually have I don't write as often as I should, but I actually have a section that says community news. And that's stuff that ain't me. That's stuff from the people who are on my list, who have said, hey, Max, I've got this going on. Would you please tell people about it?
Yeah, I think that's great. And one of the things that I've done, you know, not so much on Join Up Dots, but on my members only podcast, is create podcasts based on what people are doing for that exact reason. And people love it. People love hearing their name and love, you know, thinking that there's a show about them. You know, it gives them a big build up. It doesn't take that much effort from me, but it goes a long way. The other thing that I do a lot of is when anybody emails me, I record a voice message on a thing called a Vocaroo, which then attaches to an email, so they don't just get an email back from me, they get my voice. And that is a lot easier for me to do because, hey, I'm known to talk a bit, but they love that because it's you know, that personal connection. So any way that you can build that personal connection is the way to do it. And I've got guys that I speak to a lot of, and sometimes I don't speak to them very often, but when I launch a product, they're more often than not, they're at the front of the queue to buy it, which is good.
You know, I love that idea about Vocaroo. My editor, Lorraine Regularly, who was also a guest on your show, she uses it, and I've been meaning to give it a try. I just haven't gotten to it yet. But I tell you what, I have noticed is that I installed Facebook Messenger on my iPhone a while back, and I found that thing where you can send people voice messages, and I've noticed that the conversations through Facebook Messenger, when I send people a voice note as opposed to just typing this stuff in, you seem to make a lot better connection with them that way. So that's.
I agree with that.
I love the idea of Vocaroo and sending people voice responses to their emails. I like that.
Yeah, I've just had
guys,
that moment.
We got about 3 minutes left.
I've just had that aha moment. I'm going to do that on the Facebook Messenger. I haven't thought of doing that, but that is brilliant, Max. I salute you, sir.
Well, then I'm having a good day. If I said one thing that David Ralph, I'm sorry about that, David. My screen reader pronounces your name wrong, and I'm afraid I've fallen into that habit. But before we're through here, if you could remind people of your websites and any of your social media accounts you want to give them, and just a parting thought or message for people as far as, how they may be able to model your success and do whatever it is they're doing better, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, you can go over to joinupdots.com in Google Land. That's the quickest place, and all the social media and whatever we've got going on is linked to that. But I would say to anybody out there, if they want to do a podcast, then basically just do a podcast. I know it sounds flippant because the actual process of recording and getting it online isn't that hard. We've got free courses through Join Up Dots that we can sort of offer out to people, which will show you the practicalities. But there's no getting away from the fact that to be a podcaster, you have to do it. You have to podcast. And if you want to be a writer, you have to write. And it all comes down to getting off your backside and just doing something and accepting that at the beginning, you're not going to be that good at it. You're not. But little by little, fingers crossed. And the brilliant thing about it, Max, is when you're not good at it, nobody listens anyway. In the early days, I couldn't get for love nor money, and then when I did, they were like mute crickets. There was no sound coming back. I was just like blasting it out to the world. So that's your practice time. That's your secret time when nobody's listening. And hopefully when they come to you and you've recorded 700 shows, they might go, oh, he sounds like he's worth listening, which they wouldn't have done at 10.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show and suffering through my technical difficulties. This is going to be one of those shows I'm not sure if I want people to hear or not, because I've definitely been allowed myself to be distracted by the stupid recorder. But I do appreciate you. I consider you a great personal friend, even though we don't talk often. And, you're somebody I always look forward to hearing from. Maybe it's the accent. Maybe it's you say stuff that makes sense. I'm not sure, but I really do love that you came on the show. And hopefully, when you do that 1,000th show, I'll be around for 1,001.
Well, yeah. What, you're alive at 1,001, or you're going to be the 1,001 guest? I need to understand this, sir.
I'm not sure I understand myself. I'm having one of those kind of days. But thank you so much for coming on the show, David, and you have a great week.
It's a delight to be there. Thanks very much, and thank you very much for Frederick sitting there quietly doing whatever he's been doing.
All right, Max. Great interview, Max. Actually, I really liked. I was surprised. I always like to interview, these kinds of people where they are very uplifting. Like David is so uplifting in his voice. You can sense it in his voice. And it's always a good time when you're going to interview somebody like that. But, Max, what did you learn about that? What did you learn today?
Well, I learned that David, he really gets it. He really, because a lot of people say that they have a passion, that they have a desire, that they have a goal. But to be willing to do what it takes and, to share with us some of the dirty jobs that he did in order to pay the bills while he was working on on becoming the podcaster. And, I think that's a good lesson, because a lot of people put too much pressure on themselves when they're starting a podcast or working on that first book, because, they don't have a day job. They don't have a side hustle. They don't have a minimum wage job that brings in the money so that they don't have that stress of paying the bills. I mean, yeah, it means dividing your time. It means working without sleep sometimes. But it all comes down to, what are you willing to do for your art, for your passion? And I really appreciated him sharing some of the things that he did in the early days as he was. And, when it's hard, when you go from, when you lose 60, 70% of your income and you're, still supporting a family, and a fairly large family, because I think he has 4 kids now. And so, it's just, I really think he shared something that a lot of people needed to hear. And that is that, successful people get that way because they're willing to do lots of things that maybe you aren't willing to yet.
Right. Yeah. And it's so funny that you just mentioned that, because yesterday I was listening to a podcast. Actually, it was Rich Dad podcast, and Robert Kiyosaki was saying exactly what you just said, Max. That's the difference between the amateurs and the pros. And actually, it was an interview with Stephen Pressfield. He wrote The War of Art, and he was talking about his journey when he was just trying to become a novelist, and it just wasn't working out and stuff. But you gotta act like a pro. This is what I believe, and this is what they said yesterday, and this is what I've learned today too, is that you gotta act like a pro. Podcasting and all these things are very, everything that's linked to our passion is oftentimes a game. Like we love it because it's not really work to us. It's like almost like a hobby. But to go from a hobby to like really real work, I think a lot of people, as you mentioned, have a hard time doing the transition because it's not serious. I don't have a commitment. The only commitment I have is the one that I give myself. Same thing with you, Max. Same thing with especially in podcasting, in the podcasting world. It's so easy to get in, right? But it's just, I don't know. I think you nailed it on the head. And this is what I learned from David also. He's just, and I looked at his website and everything. He's a hustler. And, like you said, he's really, a dreamer, and he really went for it, to quit a job and to go and deliver food, Chinese food. You gotta want it. But I totally respect this guy, honestly.
Even for somebody like me, it's great to have a guy like David come along and remind me of that I need to be conscious of what am I willing to do, or eliminating things that I'm unwilling to do in order to make the blind blogger the success that many people think it is, and that I really want it to be in the future.
Right. Yeah, man. Yeah. I don't know. I'm inspired right now. I'm inspired to just keep hustling, keep going out there. And guys, by the way, we would like to thank those who pledged to our Patreon page. You are really helpful to the show, and we are grateful for your help. In case you're wondering, Patreon is a simple way for you to contribute to the network. Every single month, they get super cool exclusive rewards in return. I promise you will love the perks. Our Patreon page is at FrederickBye.com. That's Frederick with a C. BuyLikeBuyBuy.com. Click Patreon in the header, and the money is used to cover our production costs and editing time. You can contribute for as low as $1. $1 little dollar. Also, guys, if you have a passion or something that fuels your curiosity, hey, on top of getting fascinating interviews such as this one straight to your inbox, when you subscribe to our free Creative Magic community, you will get super cool exclusive gifts in return, such as the ebook Happiness Quotes by the ambassador of happiness herself, and also an exclusive conversation with two of my favorite people, Nigerian sensation Alex Okoroji and yours truly, Max Ivy, as we talk about the influence of friends and college education on our lives, the competitiveness in a crowded field, the importance of business and financial education and arts and entrepreneurship, and more. And you can subscribe for free at FrederickBuy.com. And Max, what do you have in the Creative Magic store?
Okay, in the Creative Magic store, they can find both of my books, Leading You Out of the Darkness into the Light, a blind man's inspirational guide to success, with 11 actionable exercises to help them go after their big goals and dreams, along with email support so they could actually connect with me while they're working through the steps in the book. And it's not the cookie, it's the bag, an easy to follow guide to weight loss success. I share the lessons I've learned prior to having gastric surgery, and then since over 4 years of successful weight management and adjusting to my new body. And just today, I got the news that the recordings have been completed, and in a few days, they'll be able to purchase the audio book of Leading You Out of the Darkness into the Light.
Wow, congratulations, man. Oh, that must be so cool. Wow, congrats. Yeah. And,
thank you. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to posting that Audible link on the Creative Magic store. That's going to be cool.
Yeah. And also, guys, we're looking for new hosts. So if you're a positively oriented individual looking to maybe to step into the podcast world and you are, looking to, maybe join the network, that would be pretty cool, guys. Looking for positively oriented people. We can lead you by the hand. Just go to frederickbaye.com and click become a host in the header. All right. It's time for us to ride off into the sunset. Last words, Max?
I would just remind people, do what you can, as however little it may be or however small it may be. Do what you can today, and then do more or do it better tomorrow. That's how I live my life. And as you know, I'm one of these people. I don't make excuses or accept them from the people in my life.
Awesome. With this, stay safe, and don't forget, live with purpose, passion, fire, and love. Bye-bye. You've been listening to What's Your Excuse with Max Ivy, known around the world as the Blind Blogger. For more information, you can go to theblindblogger.net or frederickbaye.com. That's Frederick with a C, bye like bye-bye.com.